Well, welcome back. I'm glad you guys had a good break. At the end of the break, we were talking about coordinating efforts, and that has to do with making sure that before you exit, part of your plan is to have somebody that, to your left and right, that knows your plan, and you can always reach back, because you'll be surprised how those contacts will help you in the future as you exit out. And a lot of times we figured, well, sayonara, goodbye, I hope I never see you again type stuff. Never burn a bridge. One of the things that I will talk about here, I have a whole workshop on some of the references that you should go through. One of the books, my favorite book of all times, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read it, read it. I've been reading it since 2002. I got tired of trying to find time to read it, so I got it in my truck as an audiobook. I always get something out of it. And in there it talks about how, thinking in terms of others and appreciating what others bring to the table, listening to people, having a genuine interest in what they say could really build your experience and your ability to better affect people. Because the first thing we want to do when we get into a social event is talk. The typical question is, how you doing? I'm doing well, and you? Good. You try to find what's the next question you're going to ask. Like, so what you been up to? And sometimes you get those people who just talk and talk and talk. And you're wondering, you're looking for your escape route, and you can't see it. You're waiting for, your wingman to come and say, hey, we got that thing, we got to go. And that sometimes never happens. But ironically enough, sometimes listening to people can get you into a great position to later influence action. And so coordinate those efforts as you move forward, because they will be something valuable. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Moving on, here we go. References. I make this very big because I think it's one of the greatest books, and one of the books that you will really find to be a great resource. In every one of my interviews, every one, I told you how I showed you the stack of cards, business cards. Every time that I've gotten one, I try to be courteous enough to email the individual back, because if they took the time to give me their business card, whether they're trying to pitch me something or this is just a meeting, I always want to have the ability to reach out and establish a connection. I think it's important to be able to know as many people as you can. I told you my goal is to meet one person every day and keep that goal for as long as I can. Because you never know what you're going to learn from them. You never know how they're going to be influential in your life or resourceful, or how you're going to be able to impact or help someone else because of that connection. So this book has taught me so much about myself, about how to relate to other people, no matter how different they are. You can always find something interesting you can relate to. We all have stories about when we were kids, playing tag or cowboys and robbers, or whether you grew up poor or you didn't grow up poor, whether you went to school and had situations that were similar, even though you were in different schools, in different social categories, you always find something, some common ground. And that is the essence of building relationships, finding the common ground with that individual. Now, for us here, we're all military. That right there sets the tone. We know, one, right off the bat, we figured we could trust each other. Number two, we want to help each other. Number three is just figuring out what's behind that uniform, the real person. It goes back to the whole me thing, being able to figure out how to show people your true selves, and how to understand yourself and know what you really want and need to do. I'll tell you one more thing about this book. One of the things I learned about it is that you can tell whether you are thinking in terms of others or in terms of yourself if you think about this analogy. In a picture, when somebody takes a picture of us, who's the first person we look for? Ourselves. We want to know if, how do we look? Right? Was I smiling? Were my eyes closed? Do I look tall enough? If I'm in the back row, oh man, I'm not going to show. Some people do this thing as if the camera can't really get you, right? As Betty is over there making sure that if I can't move too much because I can't go too far, right? She's trying to follow me. But I can move probably this way, and I won't be out of the picture. And every time we look at a picture, if we're looking at ourselves first, we know that's just natural. Remember to try to be the frame in the picture versus the picture itself. I learned that from reading this book and understanding how do you change the perception, because that's going to help you in interviews. What I try to do, instead of trying to figure out what are they going to do with me, I try to figure out how will I be courteous enough to remember people's names. So when I do email them, I reference something that we discussed, aside from the interview. Forget the interview completely. That's what's going to make an impact. Do you really have an appreciation for who you met? Because everyone on that panel that's interviewing you has a life. They're concerned about their job too, probably, and they're trying to figure out how to stay there. And so you making that difference is going to make you stand out. When I build network connections with people, I try to be more personal. I really do get concerned. I was down south this weekend looking at some properties, and the realtor was telling me over the email that his wife fell and injured her knee. And actually today, they have to be in the hospital for surgery. And I asked Melanie, my wife, to send flowers to Mrs. Realtor because I thought it would be thoughtful. He spent 2 days with me, my wife, and my 5 children showing us homes all over this place. And I thought it'd be thoughtful. I mean, I don't have to do it. It probably doesn't make a difference. He probably sees clients come and go. But I thought that is, again, one of those things that we should practice in making sure that we reference ourselves, we project ourselves from others. And these references are key. There's other books. As you get into interviews and career transition, it is extremely important that you do this work. Read books like What Color is Your Parachute? You probably have heard of that book. I don't know if I think you went to TAP class, if I'm correct. No? Somebody, I think you did, right? They should have these kinds of resources for you guys. This is What Color is Your Parachute? It just talks about, are you prepared? Do you know what you need to? They're good resources. And what I'm telling you is the complement of these books. One of them won't tell you everything, but learning from all of these will be not only a great resource for understanding how to project yourself out there, but it's also a great groundbreaker when you're in a meeting and you tell people, according to Good to Great, Jim Collins, XYZ, and somebody in the group can appreciate because they read the book too. There's other books that I don't list here. I have them on my LinkedIn profile. I have all the books that I read. I put them there. The latest one I'm reading is called The 4-Hour Work Week, which is a very interesting book. It's a pretty interesting guy. I always think he must have been in the military because he's very energetic, lean forward kind of guy. He talks about how he did all these things and going to a 4-hour work week. It's one of those motivational type books and called the action books. It worked for him. It should work for a lot of people, not for everyone. But it's just another tool. You can always get a nugget out of those things to help you in an interview, in a network meeting, even to help others figure out what to do. I use a lot of these quotes from these books, like the Good to Great book when I told you it's when you become a manager or you're in charge of people, in the civilian world, you want to have the right people on the bus. And you heard this, right? The wrong people off the bus. But Jim Collins adds something really interesting. He adds the right people in the right seats. A lot of times we don't get that in the military because we get what we get, right? We have to make the team work. We always have a 10%, and that's fair, right? There's always that 10% that just doesn't follow suit, right? That's just the way it is. But you work with it. The greatest compliment to you in the civilian world is to be able to put the right people in the right seats. And as military leaders, we already have an advantage to most of the people who just graduated college or graduated high school, have been there a long time. We have managed people from the moment that we were born in the military, that we could put our diapers and walk. If there was 2 of us, guess what? One of us is in charge, right? It's always one of us in charge. Whether it was a day, hey, I'm a day senior to you. You heard that story. We learn to figure out how to manage people. It is part of our makeup in the military. Out in the civilian world, you'd be surprised how many people that I've met in companies that I've gone to do interviews, and I just kind of, as I'm walking through the hall and I ask and I try to establish a conversation, people don't want to manage people. They love the ability to come to work, do their job, and go home. And that is perfectly fine. For some of us, we couldn't imagine not managing people. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like, what do you mean? We all must manage. For some of us, again, back to the retirement piece, sometimes we want to just retire. Some people just want to go to school. And those of us who want to go to work, sometimes just want to go to work. We don't want to have to deal with the hardships of managing human relations. This book will help you. It will help you even to manage the toughest relations that you encounter. Because sometimes the difficulty in managing the difficult people is not that they're difficult, it's that you're unwilling to find a way to make it work. It's very seldom that you'll find, very seldom, and I know that there are cases that you just can't do anything. No matter, everybody around you seems to know that that person is difficult. I would argue that it is just about finding the right motivation to get people understood. If you ask that person, they'll probably tell you a very eloquent argument of why they feel that they're right. Whether you agree or not is irrelevant. It's all a matter of being able to do that whole, I got this when I was doing, early on in our marriage. We've been married 12 years. And I'm very open to say, any marriage that has not gone through struggles hasn't really experienced true love. Because you have to go through that process of getting to know each other. I understand my wife, Southern girl, I don't know if you call her an American, but just a typical American girl. I grew up in South America, Lebanese father, Austrian-German mother, born in California, raised in the Corps. That is a very difficult combination, right? Jewish grandfather, I should add that. So it was a lot of bumping. And she's a very quiet, very sweet lady, sweet gal. But I learned early on in our marriage this whole trick about the Mcdonnells Method. I said, what? Yeah, the Mcdonnells Method. If you have an argument with your wife, just ask her, welcome to McDonald's. May I take your order? And essentially you're listening instead of trying to immediately rebuttal on what they're saying, because you already have an answer for why they're wrong. That person, I'm talking about marriage, but that person. You already know before you start the conversation, when you're like this, you're like, okay, yeah, tell me what's the problem. You already know that you're going to rebuttal. Instead of saying, welcome to McDonald's, may I take your order? And then you repeat that order, right? So what you're saying is, and as we become better managers, we get better at that, at having the ability to listen to people and at least assess. Even if we don't agree, we're taught to manage and to first assess and decide based on the options on the table, how can we solve the situation, right? And if you're lucky enough to manage both military and civilians, then you really have a great opportunity to find a contrast. I got over here, grinning. I'm sure that you've experienced that joy. And it is a challenge, right? But it is truly an asset as well when you go into an interview and you can tell them. So, because they ask you things like, I do a whole workshop on interviews. And you have to have those 3 experiences. You want to have 3 key experiences when you go into an interview that have to do with dealing with people, dealing with resource shortage, and then one experience that they're going to try to fly. It's always one of those wild cards. Some interviewers will throw you things like, so what do you like to do on your free time? What do you think is that question about? Anybody? Anybody. You got to speak into the mic. I know it's kind of a little annoying, but we have to. What do you think that question is about? When I say, hey, what do you do in your free time?
It's basically trying to figure out about your personality.
Trying to figure out about your personality?
Determine what kind of person you are in general.
What person you are in general. I'll just repeat. Go ahead. What do you think is the question about? What do you like to do on your free time?
I guess it would depend on the company. They might be trying to see if you put work first as a priority or if you put life first as a priority.
If you put work or life as a priority is the answer. What about you?
Maybe just trying to get less of a prepared answer.
Now, see if you can do something on the fly, less of a prepared answer. If
So
you
like
can.
you're more likely to be honest in your answer when it's something about just your personal life, I guess.
So something, they're trying to figure out something about your personal life.
Yeah, I think I would go with the answer about where your priorities are.
what your priorities are. And again, it's a tricky question. There's no wrong answer. I would say some references would tell you that's sometimes a way to find out if you're married, have kids, which obviously you can ask as an employer. You cannot ask, are you married? You have kids? How many? Where do you live? So again, you have to be prepared in an interview for just about anything. You have to be, and that wild card is always tricky. So having an answer to, so what do you love to do in your free time? When in doubt, always go back to the purpose why you're there. I know it sounds too prepared, but guess what? You better be. A lot of people say, just relax, just what do you got to do? Well, on my free time, I like to review your company's financial assets. You're not going to say that, right? To understand better how we're going to project a 5-year profits. Obviously not. Be flexible enough to always bring the question back to why you're there. And if you're asked this question about, so what do you like to do in your free time? Sports is always good. The balance between, again, when you say balance between home life and sports, I like to spend time with my kids. Who doesn't? That's immediately just, okay, good, kids and wife. So now we know it may be a benefits issue. And I'm telling you, these are the facts. You may not hear this from everybody, but these are the facts. Whether every company does it, obviously not. But is it a good technique to find out more about your personal life? Sure. Okay? So I always tell people have those three experiences, because you will have them from your... I didn't think this was important. When I did those 47 sit-down interviews, I realized over time, these things kind of repeat themselves. I felt like I was in Groundhog Day. And it was exciting, believe it or not, because I went into these interviews, the first 5, I was really stressed out, worried, did I have the right suit? I mean, do I look tall enough? Is my hair too short? They're gonna know I'm a Marine, and you know how they think of Marines, difficult guys. I mean, these guys are gonna come and harass people. Am I sitting right? Because I was used to going to meritorious boards, so you got to sit down, hands on your knees, 45-degree angle, don't move, stiff. And here, can I cross my leg? Can I look too relaxed? What kind of chair will they have? How far will I be from them? Do I report to the desk? I'm telling you what my perception was. Or do you go and try to be like, I'm going to try to act civilian, like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, okay. Did you get too far to the left? Right? All of these things went through my... After the 7th, 8th, 9th, I realized that there was a certain pattern to this stuff. And that's why I ask you to go to as many interviews as you can, even if you're not going to make them, make the job. Because it'll help you also be the guy on the other side someday. It'll help you understand how things are articulate. Some companies require that you do tests. When I did an interview for Procter & Gamble, I had to do a test online. And then I had to do the test to prove that I actually did the test. Ironically, I aced the interview. I did great. All the 3 interviews were awesome. I failed the test. Remember I told you the Procter & Gamble VPs that called me and set up this stuff for me? I failed the test. And this is for an entry-level job. I think the question was, if you have a wall that's 7 feet high and has a angle of 9 feet and the boxes are 9 by 3 by 4, how many boxes can you fit in this area? That's exactly what I did. I rolled my eyes both ways. I was like, and I'm a logistician. I mean, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. My answer to the question is, get as many boxes in that area as possible. Whatever's left, keep it in the truck. I mean, we are managers of contingencies. And I will always tell you, pull that out. Pull the experiences, the most difficult experiences, and talk about contingency planning. Talk about on-the-spot adjustments. Because everybody loves a plan that's laid out. Well, here's the business plan. Here's how the company's been doing business for the last 50 years. And you're just going to fall into this 50-year plan, and you're going to keep doing it this way. Those managers who excel, those workers who excel, are those who think outside the box and come in with contingency planning, on-the-spot adjustments, creative ideas that make more efficient use of resources. And that's what you'll learn from these references. The words that we don't employ sometimes in our military lingo. If we're talking about good to go, roger that, aye, right? All those things to them it shows that you haven't flipped the switch. So getting yourself into this training mode, we talked about I'm giving you different tools here, but this whole process of educating yourself or retraining your brain to speak the business lingo. And we'll talk about really for the interview process how you have to study your target, as we would call it here, but really it's your target company. Study them not just from the internet, but really understanding from LinkedIn, again, like I told you, who is where, what is what, to understand what words are key to those companies. And these books will help you do that. Over the Top is a great book. Some of you might have seen it. First Things First talks back to what I told you your priorities should be. For those of you who weren't here, the 3 priorities are salary, location, or job satisfaction. Prioritize that, and you will be successful, no matter what you do. Because you will never second guess your true nature. You can always second guess whether, am I happy? Well, at least we're making enough money, more money than we need. Or, going to Hawaii. We're talking with Bill, we need to have a job in Hawaii to, will really Hawaii be fun if you have to go there so many times? And I can attest to that. As a head of testing control for the Marine Corps, I had to go to Hawaii at least once a year. After doing it 3 times, I literally got tired of the trip. Just having to hop all the way to Hawaii and then come back through California and start hitting some bases there. So, again, it all has to do with following your true nature. These references will help you. And by the way, Built to Last is a prequel to Good to Great, but he wrote it after. And showing how do good companies become great, but how do companies that are great, how these companies are built to last rather than just, you don't hear of Coca-Cola needing a bailout, or some of the companies that have been solid. He mentions some of these in this book. There's another great author that I love, John C. Maxwell. John C. Maxwell has a book. It's called, I don't have it here, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It's an amazing book. It's a very short read because it's 21 chapters, if you will, of 2 to 3 pages each. And where it talks about all these rules about leadership. And they were really very easy to understand for those of us who are in the military. But one of the rules that I found interesting, and this is something that will help you in an interview, sometimes the person leading the meeting is not the leader. We experience this a lot in the military. Sometimes, as officers, we are in charge. We're supposed to lead, and we're supposed to manage. And every now and then, you meet one of us who doesn't recognize the leadership that we have in our senior enlisted, and there's a clash, right? How do you balance the experience of over 20 years in the senior enlisted versus the decree to manage? You have been directed, appointed. You're now responsible, accountable, right? And so you must lead. You have the authority, the responsibility, the accountability, and the requirement. But how do you not look at your senior leaders and say, what do you think? Now, we know this now, but there are cases where the anxiety to perform is such that we have this blur effect, and we forget to see those leaders there. The same thing happens in an interview. There's always a guy who's sitting either with his hand like this or with his hands like that. He doesn't look much like he's got a whole lot of power, but he's probably the person who purposely sat at the end, because what are you focusing on in an interview? You're focusing on the person in the middle. You assume the person in the middle has got to be the leader. And so again, being able to read some of these references, and whether you like the books or not, they will teach you something that will help you pull out these incredible tools during your interview, networking, even if you're on the job, whatever you must do. And again, there's a full list on my LinkedIn profile, but this is no rocket science. If you Google this one, I'm sure that it will give you all kinds of choices for something like it. You can go to many websites and find out other books like that. Let me transition real quick to LinkedIn while we're on the subject. As I told you earlier, in the 6 months that I started doing LinkedIn, I was able to get more interviews and networking opportunities that I did through my personal and professional network. And I really thought I knew some people. I mean, I was working at headquarters of Marine Corps. You would think that has something, at least some opportunity to get me a job. Now, I won't say it didn't. It sure gave me an opportunity to touch some people that I wouldn't have otherwise if I was on the outside. But I also couldn't have imagined the incredible resource that LinkedIn was for me. And again, I got to give credit to John Stanton, a retired Marine, who taught me this and kind of helped me go through it. And let me tell you this, I had the hardest time with resumes. I really didn't want to do my resume. I dreaded it. I was like, how do I even go? There's so many formats. What's the best one? Then they want you to adapt it every time you submit for a job. They're talking about, there's a GS resume, which is like 20 million pages long, and they like to have everything you've ever done minus going to the bathroom. They want to know everything. Then there's a business that say, hey, max 2 pages. Then there's certain resumes that are required with, okay, give me your resume, but then give me your technical expertise. So then there's no standard. And so for me, the resume was hard, but I had to do it in order to do this. But what I did do, and what I try to share with fellow service members, is that your resume is already built in your performance evaluations. We call them fitness reports. If you look at your performance evaluations, you will have a date period of where you perform a certain billet title, what the description of that was, and what you accomplished. Does that sound like a resume? You bet. The first thing that I tell people is just take those sections, copy, paste them into a generic format. Just the 4 sections: the period, the title, the billet description, and the billet accomplishments. You can change the wording later, but ideally you want to have those 4 pieces. You can also put, you'll know the location there, where did you do this job. The next step is going to be how to change the name of maintenance chief, right? Not many companies have chiefs in their lingo, so you want to have mid-level supervisor or mid-level manager, or a certain word that connotates that you were in charge of the number of people that you say you were as a maintenance chief. Action officer. What does that mean? What is an action officer in the civilian world? They have no clue. And again, I'll go back to, I've reviewed over 500 resumes. You wouldn't believe, how many of you have TSSCI clearances? I do, everybody else does. Where do you think that should be in your resume? At the very top, right below your name. And you wouldn't believe how many people don't do that. They put it on the 2nd or 3rd or 4th page, right below education. Even when the job that I'm calling for says must have TSSCI. Because see, the first thing that an HR manager is going to do, or recruiter is going to do, look for the criteria for qualifications. If you submit your resume to Monster.com or to the USA job sites, or to some companies now, some private companies more than anything, have now a system, and my computer folks can verify this, that actually does a crawl through the whole resume to find keywords and evaluate the resume against the requirements and pull it out. And if you don't have those keywords, you're not going to get the job you want. It's like, I put my resume everywhere. I've done this. I even paid somebody to put my resume together, $300. I did not. And I still can't get the job. I had a gal who kept asking me, I don't understand it. I've been a senior executive assistant for many years. I was the executive assistant of this VP and that VP, and I can't get a job. And I said, well, what does your resume look like? And it was really tough to see some of those things in the resume because she had been in the military before, so there was some military stuff in there. It didn't make sense. You also want to have relevance. You don't want to put 20 years of stuff. You want to pick your top stuff and make it relevant to the job. But that resume can be used on LinkedIn to create your profile. And that's one of the things I do. And I go through a class that explains all of these links right here, each one of them, and goes through what each mean, how to use it. In the morning we come in, you have your resume and your picture. We build a LinkedIn profile. By the end of the day, at least one person is getting some sort of answer from an employee or at least a network connection. Because I tell them by the end of the day, you will have at least 10 connections or you're not leaving the place. And I get emails back say, hey, I'm going to 2 interviews this week. And that's, again, the engine is now starting to run. And this will be much faster than anything you do. Did I do online websites, submit my resume to online? I did it to try it. I wanted to see. I mean, I tried everything. Purposely to try. When I went to those 47 interviews, it was for training. When I put my resumes in the system, for training. I got to tell you, I didn't get one call from those online things. Now, you would wonder, well, did your resume have anything valuable? You would think that with at least one master's degree, somebody would call me, right? Logistician for 10 years, linguist, clearance. One of those should have hit a target. Maybe I wasn't as effective because I wasn't as dedicated to the online piece, because for me, and I tell you honestly, I was biased. Every night, I was on LinkedIn, typing in names of companies that I want to work for. UPS, FedEx, all that. I looked at the 500, at the S&P 500. I looked at Amazon.com. I enjoyed my interview with Amazon.com. They were great people. I love the idea of what they're doing, and I was just thrilled. The idea of logistics in Amazon was like a kid in a candy store for me. And all that through LinkedIn. All that through LinkedIn. Because for me, LinkedIn, and I still actually use LinkedIn. When I look for people for jobs, guess where I go? LinkedIn. I've joined 50 different groups, which is the max number of groups that you can join. Groups that relate to what I like. Linguists, logistics, military network, whether it's the Defense Logistics Network, the Military Veterans of America, blah, blah, blah. Because they know the guys that have the skills that I'm looking for. Comment? Okay. After you create your account and you transcribe your skills, like I said, by just building it, there's a little link there. If you have your resume, that you can upload it and this thing populates immediately. That easy. It is an amazing thing. And you would be foolish not to at least have your LinkedIn profile. The second foolish thing you will do is have a LinkedIn profile and have one contact there for 6 months. It's ironic that sometimes I do get requests, invitations. They're called invitations. The people want to link to my network. And I'm always glad to add them. But here's my 2 rules. If your invitation says, I like to link to your network, which is it's a generic populated email message. It's like saying thank you for your order. I say no. If you don't take the effort to write something, hey Caesar, hi, I'm former military, I'd like to join your network, I don't accept them. The other thing I'll do is when I go click on theirs and I see they have 1 contact or 3 contacts, I wonder, what's the purpose? Because I'm looking for business network connections. I want to establish a network like every other person on my network that says, how can we help each other? How can I help you if you need my support? I've had people who say, hey Caesar, would you help me link to this person, because you can actually do referrals where you can touch that guy or that gal, but you know me, and through my introduction, it's like an introduction, like a virtual introduction. You get to virtually introduce the person to you. I've had those opportunities to do that. Anybody here watches the show Shark Tank? No? It's a reality show on TV. It has these great entrepreneurs. I enjoy it because it's typical Americans going to pitch their ideas. Some guys walk out of there with $1 million deals. Some walk out of there with a reality check that your baby's not beautiful, which they can't believe. It's like American Idol when they say, what? I can't sing? What do you mean? My mom, my dad, my singing coach said I can sing. Well, Simon Cowell says you can't sing, and that means you can't sing. But I've linked to some of those entrepreneurs. I've linked to a couple of senators. There's people that you can link to that you could never meet in person. You couldn't touch the VP of the company you want to work with if you tried, if you knocked on the door of the headquarters building. But LinkedIn gives you that opportunity with the right profile, a professional picture, which you will see if you go to LinkedIn, you'll see some people who just, again, they're walking their dog, they're with their girlfriend, and it's cut off actually, a little cut off picture of them and half of their girlfriend's picture. They're driving and somebody took a picture and they put it on LinkedIn. Let me tell you what, it's like going on an interview. This is your virtual office. You are on an interview every single day because one of the things you'll find out from LinkedIn, down on this side of LinkedIn over here, it tells you who's looking at your profile. Anybody has LinkedIn here? Oh. Right, Bill? Reggie? They can attest to LinkedIn. I can't find one person who says, LinkedIn is worthless. I have a lady who works with an embassy of a foreign country. She was trying to find a videographer and an editor in some country to do an interview for this government official. I said, go to LinkedIn. She found them like this. She had the crew there. They did the interview. They did the job, sent it to the other country. Boom, done. Oh, Cesar, think. I said, don't thank me. I didn't do anything. LinkedIn. I'm not promoting, I'm not a spokesperson for LinkedIn, but I got to tell you, as a guy who transitioned less than a year ago, and within 6 months, I was able to really harness a very fraction of the power of LinkedIn. I can imagine not sharing that with you guys. So I have a detailed PowerPoint presentation with a workshop. It has to be in a computer room where we go through this process and literally go through the wickets of building your LinkedIn and managing it and increasing your network opportunity. You will never have a greater resource than LinkedIn. You could touch anybody in the world if they're on LinkedIn. That simple. Joining groups, I talked about that, and developing your networks. Those are key components of being able to have the right connections, because if you're in the right groups and the things that you want, you will always get related to other people. I don't do a whole lot of talking in the groups, but sometimes people do have groups that ask questions about something that you do or something that you may know, and that sparks an interest in the group and say, well, who's this guy? Who's Shoop? Let me go look at his profile. All of a sudden, again, you're generating traffic to your profile. And the key is that you're starting to show that you're a SME in that particular topic, because they ask questions. As long as you're not compromising, obviously, security, need to know, PII, the things that we know, OPSEC type stuff, you should be very effective at answering a professional question from a business angle and being immediately asked, so, hey, can you tell us more about that? I've had a couple of experiences like that where I thought, okay, the question I think was, is leadership, are leaders born or made? You heard the old adage, are leaders born or made? And I made a comment about it that seemed to have a different flavor to it. And so it sparked some other topics of discussion that led into some great relationships that I hold to this day. Network heavily. I told you I had a goal that for the first 6 months, no, I'm lying, from October to January, the first 3 months, I wanted to get at least 100 people on my LinkedIn. And by 6 months, I wanted to achieve 500 contacts. Why? I think it's a combination of, I guess, on LinkedIn, you get this thing that says, where is it at here? Connections, 500 plus connections. And so that's the only thing they show you. After 500, all of a sudden, you're like this gold member, right? You don't know how many. You can have 500 or 501, or you can have 3,600. Now, the tricks to LinkedIn on this is that you can actually put up here in this title. I know people who put up next to their name, they put in parentheses 3,600 connections. Yeah, I can't verify them, but some of them can. You can unless they have it hidden and secured. But I guess when you hit 500 plus, I call it gold membership. I don't know. But it was interesting that I wanted to have that goal because I wanted to see if this would generate some opportunities, and it surely did. I cannot tell you, I'm not disappointed one bit in this transition tool. And if you do nothing more, then do a great LinkedIn profile. I mean a solid, great LinkedIn profile. And you'll see, what you see here is just the top of it. If we had an internet access, I would show you the rest of it. It has a summary of core competencies, just what I can do. And then it goes through each of the billets that I've done, education, certifications, medals, everything you've ever done. And it's really an effective way to show what you want to show and market yourself to the right people. Because one of the things that LinkedIn will do with both the title that you have here, and I would tell you that my title on LinkedIn is Executive Director of X Corp. I'm actually the owner and president of X Corp. But who cares to see a guy saying, oh yeah, you're the CEO. Great, good for you. What can we do with a CEO? Nothing. At least in my opinion, I felt like I wanted to earn my right to promote myself. So I've started at the worker bee level. And so on LinkedIn, I'm very conservative in my title, because this title here, when you go to more, it will look for jobs based on the title you put there. And so the workshop that I go through is being very strategic, all the way from the title that you pick on LinkedIn to the time that you have been in each of your billets, because it actually shows how much time, and automatically populates based on the dates you put in there, how long you've been on that billet, on the job position. And some people go really far into what they do. Sometimes you want to be very concise, because it's too loud in terms of visual effects. You don't want to put, okay, so you PCS from here to there. That's supposed to be an accomplishment. Some people get that. I don't know if you remember, in boot camp for Marines, we get these red satin jackets, and Marines would put in, Recruit Depot, MCRD, Recruit Depot, First Duty Station, delayed stop in Anchorage, Alaska, all these hash marks of things that they've been. And you've been in the Corps for 3 months. And they have all these things. So sometimes too much can really be discrediting. So be selective. The other thing that you get on LinkedIn with your profile is the ability to actually edit and put in comments. In your performance evaluations, you have a reporting senior, I suppose, and a reviewing officer, which are your immediate supervisor and the person that revises that performance eval. And I know different services call it different. We call them fitness reports. And it's a reporting senior, who's the person who writes my fitness report, right? And then the reviewing officer who reviews those comments. But they put section comments, specific accomplishment, or the profile, the picture of the individual that cannot go into the whole evaluation. I took those out and put them in there with the title of the person who wrote them, so they would know who wrote those comments, so they can verify them. Because one of the great things about LinkedIn, if you look up here, is that it says there 25 recommendations, at least in my profile. You want people that you admire or people that you value to recommend you, because those are invaluable references that you can get from those who have seen you perform. And if you can't get those right away, the other way is what I'm telling you. Take the comments from your RS and your RO and you put them into each of your billet descriptions. And if you go to my LinkedIn, you will find that out. You will see that I have comments from my senior superior officers, what they said and how they said it, in each of those bill descriptions. I mentioned just add recommendations. Seek recommendations for people, but don't be so bold as to say, hey, would you recommend me? Don't be so bold. Back to the whole invitation piece. If you want somebody to connect to you, have the thoughtfulness, remember, be the frame, of asking them for a true invitation by saying something meaningful. Hey, I'm transitioning from the military. I noticed that you are Army, so am I. Air Force, Navy, so am I. And I would really love to network with you to find opportunities. Sometimes it's always better to put it in their terms, meaning, I notice your profile is from combat engineers. I have a background in combat engineers. I would very much appreciate establishing a network with you and understand how did you transition as a combat engineer, so I can benefit from those things, or put it into their context. I hope that my network is valuable to you and I can provide some meaningful strength in your network through our contact connection. Something that shows that you're just not saying, hey, I'm sending you an invitation. Can you just say yes? Again, this is no Facebook. Don't confuse this with Facebook. This is a professional business environment. There's only one picture you get, and that's a picture of your profile. There's no, here's what I did this weekend. This is me fishing. This is me about to get in the water. Another word of caution, and this is not something you have to do, but something that I really felt that it's important as a professional. I took down my Facebook page because, again, guess what those recruiters are doing? They're checking you out before you go to your interview. And nowadays, we're everywhere. I just found out that I guess Google has an application that every time you take a picture with your phone, it automatically uploads it into Google. So Google your name before you start going for a job to see what pops up. Go to images, see what comes up. Clean your house before you transition. These are the things that sometimes we get in the TAPS classes that we really need to know, because everything that you have out there can and will be used against you in that interview. And guess what? You're going to project yourself. You got the right suit, right? You got the dark suit, the power tie, the white shirt, the good haircut, the polished shoes. So they see that you don't have the scuff marks. So they say, okay, this guy didn't just wear the same shoes he's been wearing for 20 years. But your last Facebook page is you with a big beer, a big 40, I guess it's called 40 ounce. In the party with your buddies, like you're like this, tongue hanging out. And you're trying to seek a position as a director or as a manager. And they're thinking, which one is it? Clean your Facebook page. I know great friends of mine that have a very clean, very professional Facebook page. They keep it limited. They restrict comments and all that stuff. But word to the wise. Okay? Keep it clean. Keep it simple. And of course, update it regularly. A lot of times, right here, this is the post and update. I caution you, this is not Facebook. I know people who update their posts saying, had a great day today. This is a great place to go to lunch out here in D.C. You got to try it. Not a business comment. If you're trying to appeal to employers or you're trying to really market yourself professionally, two things I advise on that section. Don't say anything, or say things that are relevant to the profession you're seeking. Be professional. You read something in the news and you want to post it because you want to show that you're current. You want to share something important about the group link that you had, because if you put a website on that post comment, it will immediately pop up the website and post it with a link to it in a picture, a thumbnail of that site. So all these things, again, will work against you if you're not doing it right. So when I talk about update it regularly, look at your stuff. I mean, after 6 months, clean it up, scrub it. You're now in a transition period from one job in the military to another. Keep balancing it, right? Keep that resume moving forward. Take the last one, put the new one once you got enough stuff. Keep refreshing it. Because you will notice after a while that those are the things that people they're trying to follow your career. Some people put everything they've done in 20 years. In one of my workshops, I had a guy who had a LinkedIn profile, because this is just a scroll down page, right? You could scroll for about almost a minute and not get to the end of the page. I mean, if you were scrolling slowly, I mean, you can really zoom it down, but if you were just trying to just grab a snippets of it, you could take a minute, a whole minute. Just think about that. We've done a minute of silence for something. Think about just, you don't know where to focus, because this guy had everything he's ever done in his life. And I'll tell you, he was very accomplished. But he was wondering why he wasn't getting a job. And part of it is that you just drowned by information overload. We know better than anybody. There's a certain point at which information is not going to yield a better result. More information won't yield a better result. Sometimes limited is better. You want to tease. You want to grab the attention. You want to hook. You don't want LinkedIn profile to be the only interview you ever have. You want to get people to be interested in, hey, you said you were in this place at this time doing this job. Would you want to come in for an interview? Be strategic. Ask yourself, what would you want someone to see if you were the person hiring yourself, how would that be more interesting to you? Make it interesting to them by asking yourself, why do I care? Ask that question. So what? So what? So you did this, so you're a linguist, so what? Answer the so what question, and that will make them interested in you. Questions on LinkedIn profile? Comments? You guys are a great group. All right, we talked about these priorities, and I want to go back to them because it is critical. It's not the same for everybody, but in the 150 people or so that I interviewed as to what made them decide on a certain job, why do certain people pick the warehouse position, and why do certain people want to go to Afghanistan for 6 figures? Hey, you know what? They're all great answers. I would love to get the 6 figures without having to go to Afghanistan. But I also would like to have the warehouse job because I'm a logistician, but without the X or Y. But what I did, when I really got down to it, and I give a lot of credit to a lady that I met Frances Hesselbein. Frances Hesselbein was the president and CEO of the Girl Scouts for 14 years. Now you wonder, well, first of all, how'd you meet her? And second of all, why does that matter? I met her through Marshall Goldsmith. If you don't know who Marshall Goldsmith, he wrote the book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. That book grabbed me. It is one of the best-selling books on the bestseller list. And he is an executive coach. He coached the CEO of Ford before he was a CEO of Ford, and I forget what he did before. I enjoy watching Marshall Goldsmith's blog and his videos because he is really a very laid-back person. But how did I meet Marshall Goldsmith? Any guesses? LinkedIn. Thank you very much for participation. LinkedIn. I was reading his book because, see, again, Marine, right? So I've been meritoriously promoted to almost every rank in the enlisted rank. I was actually, what do they call that, frocked, and I was a company commander as a first lieutenant. And I was like, well, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. Who's not going to want me, right? Exactly. That's what everybody probably thinks. Boy, this guy's full of himself. He is still in the picture. His book was a punch in the face, what I needed. I realized that what got me there at that point in time won't get me to the next stage. I love the book because it really centers you. It humbles you to let you know that, wait a minute. Yes, you've accomplished all this in this environment, in your military environment. You might be the best linguist in the world, the best engineer, the best logistician, the highest commanding officer. I talked about the CO, Colonel Type, who was at the peak of his career, was the CEO of one of the most prestigious schools, and decided he just wanted to take a regular job. But it humbled me because I realized that when I go to interviews, they don't care how many medals I got, where did I go, how hard I had it, whether it was in Korea or Somalia or anywhere else that we've been, or the sandbox, or on ship. No offense to my fellow Navy sailor. I was on an LST, which is a very small ship, and those things bob and weave. I won't tell you the rest of the story because it's almost lunchtime anyway. But that book really grabbed me. So I linked him, and he accepted the invitation, and I asked him a question. I said, Marshall, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I've accomplished all this, and your book really told me you're nothing. Which, that was my interpretation of it, but it was really him saying, hey, recenter, focus, what you're going to do next, and figure out how you're going to appeal to them. Don't expect them to want you because you think you're great. Tell them why you think you're great and why you're going to help their institution, their organization succeed. Marshall said, you know what? You need to talk to Frances Hesselbein. And would you believe that I made the mistake of assuming Frances was a man? So when I emailed Frances, typical rookie mistake. This was one of our first interviews. Hi, Frances, thank you. I hope you this. And I said, oh, I was talking to her executive assistant. That's what it was. I said, can you tell him that I'll call him when he gets back from his vacation? Gloria said, Mrs. Hesselbein is not a man. And I was in the office, and my supervisor was there, and I said, I just made a big mistake. Typical rookie mistake for an interview. I just blew my chances. They Google her. And they said, well, did you Google? I said, no, I didn't. And believe me, what I'm telling you now is not my successes. It's how I failed that has gotten me to where I believe is the right place to share this with you. They Google her, and that's when I found out that she was the CEO of the president of the Girl Scouts. She changed the Girl Scouts forever. She was also, anybody know Peter Drucker? Anybody heard of Peter Drucker? He is the father of modern day management. Okay? If you haven't read Peter Drucker's books, you should read at least one. He's the guy that said your mission should fit on a t-shirt. And if it doesn't, you need to revise it. It's too long. Peter Drucker formed the Peter Drucker Institute, which was later named the Peter Drucker, God, I forgot the name, the Leadership Institute. The Peter Drucker Leadership Institute. I got to check that name. But they just renamed it to the Frances Hesselbein Leadership Institute. And so she's a very, very accomplished woman. And I went to meet her. And she humbled me again. I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And she goes, Cesar, you have to first figure out what's the next mission you want to accomplish. You know who you are. You know what you want to do, per se. Now you got to figure out what to do. And to me, it was a powerful message when I learned that I had to get these things together. I had been listening to advice from other people about what they did and how they did it, instead of applying what they did and how they did it to my true reality. My first assessment was, well, I got to go for salary, right? I mean, I can't live on a military salary forever. I've been lucky, low taxes, great allowances that don't go into your tax. I mean, it's a great life. And let me say this. Don't get out of the military if you can stay. I was blessed to be able to stay to retirement, and I knew my time. I knew when I wanted to get out. As I told you, I planned 10 years out for retirement. And to me, it was 10 years and 6 months was to the date that I was ready to go. Because I was excited. I love being a Marine, and I'll always be on that mode. But I was ready to move on to my next career. But if you can stay, stay. But just plan. For me to get out was a question. Well, how do I decide? And I came up with those 3 things that across the board, from everybody I interviewed and everybody I talked to, were the 3 things that you can always pick back to. Whatever job that you picked, you did it for one of those 3 reasons. And now when you get an assignment, you don't choose to. Well, unless you're First Sergeant Holland, you don't get to choose where you go. He has to go to all the nasty places to fix whatever wasn't fixed there. And then maybe get a good tour at the last time, but we'll see. We'll see if it's good. But the point is, in the military, we don't get to choose, right? We get paid a set salary because we're not doing it for the money. We go to the job that they tell us we have to go to because it's a career progression thing. And that's it. We find job satisfaction in accomplishing things and trying to find our new niche. Our families must adjust, and that's the way it goes. But when we get out, we do exactly what happens in the system, in the education system. We groom people to go through this education process. Right? We say, you got to take this, 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 and this to get to high school. And then in high school, you got to take this to get to college. And when you graduate college, you got to get to this to get a master's, doctor. But when you get out to the workforce, there is no specific plan. You just got to, we don't plan to, we don't teach people how to execute. We teach people how to program things. And so when we get out, we don't look at the board and say, well, what do I want? Am I, and again, there's no wrong answer. Do I want to make the most money I can make? So I can, I don't know, have an easy retirement when I'm done. Maybe you're single. Maybe you don't have any other responsibilities other than yourself. Maybe you have a dog. But you just want to go. Maybe you want to deploy. You miss the sandbox. You miss being in the fight. I know a great guy who used to work at this company. He was an XO of a battalion. Okay? Probably a major, maybe a lieutenant colonel. We'll leave it at that. And he was doing this job, managing 25 people at this location. And I went to interview at this company. on the other side of the coast. And I said, why do you like this? Oh, because I get to manage people and do this and do that. And just having that interaction between us made him miss the core. So much that he left the job and went to Afghanistan. He's still there. And he loves it. I mean, this guy, it's like a dog in a little in the water. He loves to be playing out there and doing all kinds of stuff. That's what he loves. You know, he's single. He enjoys life. And to him, it's what he wants to. And he gets paid a lot of money, by the way, a lot of money for what he does. He has to sit in a little, very small shack, but he gets paid a lot of money. Make sure that you know, in terms of salary, what is the minimum required income you have. This is going to go back to, hopefully I got this here. You're going to be baffled by this, the budget. This is an annual budget. And I'll tell you this is my annual budget. I told you everything that I'm going to show here is something that I have used and done. You better know what is your minimum required income. And you know that by understanding, again, remember that reverse planning slide that we had? Understanding your plan, what to exit, what do you need by this date? How are you going to get there? Sometimes you think you need more than what you really need. I would argue that you don't need more than $5,000 a month to live. I got 5 kids, wife. If I had to, I could go to $2,500 a month. Sure, I have to move probably to a country that's different economy, but no, to live in the States, I could do that actually, and probably get a very humble job, maybe be a coach at a high school, which I would love to do, and just live a good, healthy, humble American life. We get, you know, to this point, like on our place, we want more. We want more for our money, and we want more for our skills, and we want more than the next guy. We always try to grow into the more. But you need to know what's the minimum that you need, because that may go into the decision of what job you take. Let's say, let me talk to the retired people for a minute. You're retired. Retirement can go from as low as maybe $1,500 a month. Nah, I'm actually lying. It's more like $2,500 a month. I don't think anybody who make that little for 20 years of service. $2,500 a month to, I don't know, maybe $1,700 a month actually. I know a guy who retired as an E6 when that was still available. It's about $1,700 a month, somewhere to that effect. And if you get disability, that could double, tax-free. So you take that into consideration. Notice I put here retirement income, other income sources. You have to know that. Don't let the employer know that, the people who are hiring you, because if they know you are retired, they're going to try to squeeze you for a little less than what you're worth. And if you're not sure, you can bet the fault is they will. So be careful about what you tell people in those terms, but also be clear about your expectations for the job. You should know what the job entails. Remember I told you earlier, first person to talk about money loses, right? You want to wait till that question comes up. I like to talk about money early. I hate it when employers would say, well, let's just kind of put that aside. I don't want to waste my time. I wanted to know what you're offering. When I was first interviewing, I wanted to understand, what is the civilian market paying for my skills? I went to salary.com. I went to other sites to figure out how much is, you know, this position worth, a logistician, an Intel guy, a linguist, I try to, articulate myself in different ways to figure out what would be the best way to find a compensation package that actually fits me. And you know what I found out? It's different in every state. It's different for every company. It's different for every position. You're not going to find the holy grail of how much are they going to pay me. You're going to find an extreme right, an extreme left, and somewhere in the middle is that average, that big sine curve that says this is what most you will probably make. And most salaries range between either 65 to 75 for just general skills, or between 75 and up to 90 for some of the more technical skills at a certain level. And then when you start getting from 90 to 110, you start paying for experience, for that person's network that they're bringing into the table, or that management ability that they have. When you start going from 110 to 120, 120 to 150, that's a whole ball of wax. There could be different aspects of that. It could be most likely, sometimes you get a good network opportunity that somebody's taking care of you. Sometimes it's that you've been in the job for so long, like the folks back here that can really, put that on the table and say, I can't do it for myself, because their technical skills are so unique that that's what they're paying for those skills. Otherwise, you don't get the kind of quality professional that you have, that you're looking for. So my point in this whole salary, know what your minimum income is. And you're going to know that by having that budget. You have to know what are your expenses going to be. How do you figure that out really is, again, a complex process that it entails a whole workshop. That you really have to figure out, okay, how much debt do I have? What are the interests on those debts in order of interest rates? When are they due? Can I reshuffle that in some way? What are my expenses? How are my expenses going to grow or go down depending on whether I own a house or rent a house? Do I need to move and pay for my moving? There's so many variables that will go into your future income. But I will say one rule is key. No matter what happens, allow 3 months for any decision that you make to make an impact on your budget. You won't know for sure your set budget for about 3 months, because it takes about 3 months to stabilize any changes in your career, whether it's your transition, whether financial, different positions, different job, or different location. It takes about 3 months to understand that. So account for that. Also account for the fact that taxes are going to be different for you. You may be in the 15% bracket because we don't have to pay allowance, tax on our allowances, on our housing allowance, and our bonuses for language, the flip pay, for our other bonuses, for danger pay, hostile duty pay, all those other great things, flight pay. So you're going to probably look at jumping into a 25% bracket. And again, there's calculators out there that can do this for you. We have a whole workshop where you actually put together this budget plan to give everybody an idea, and you will be surprised. Sometimes it takes just a phone call to either eliminate a debt, some debt that you have, or to fix something and realize that, wait a minute, I didn't know this much. Because having a detailed budget, like what I showed you, is very, very uncommon. I mean, you may have it, but not everybody does one. So they live kind of in the, well, there's money in the bank, right? And we'll just spend, and if we don't, we'll just pull out the credit card. And we'll just, supplement like that. I mean, believe me. And for those of us who have started at the E1, E2 levels, I mean, and I didn't, but there are people who already had a wife and kids as an E2, E3. That's a tough life. So they're already carrying all that baggage forward. So assess your minimum required income when you're trying to look for a job. Know if your retirement income is going to cover some of the gap in between what you want to have as a job, what you need to make, and let's say that you have a job that you like, but they won't pay you what you want. So maybe that's when you bring your retirement income into play. And of course, what's your desired income? Know what you want to have. So you got to have that space, right? You want to make this much. Everybody should have that, I want to make this much. I need to make this much. And understand that gap in between. And the key is to obviously understand two things. What you can live with, worst case scenario, and what you want to make. And then figure out how does that gap balance into these other two pieces, which are job satisfaction and location. Let's take a quick break for about 5 minutes or so and come back and talk about the other two. Thank you.